Hi guys. I have a confession. I have been promising this particular video that I'm about to give to you guys for almost a year. Okay, maybe not quite that long, but for a really long time. It is, your guys should remember my Daydreamer rope that so many of you guys have done. It has been basically my most popular project ever, was the Daydreamer rope. And some of the ladies in my online group, there's a group on Facebook called Jill Wiseman's Beautiful Beaded Ropes. It was named after the title of my book, but it's because it was originally about all the projects in my book. We started the group before we started the YouTube channel. So now we can't change the name of the group because there's too many members, but everything in that group has to do with any of our projects, whether it's YouTube projects or kit projects or book projects. All the ladies in this group, we all talk about the various things that they've done. They show pictures, people can ask questions. So the Facebook group is a really good resource for you if you're not already a part of it. And one of the things that happened with Daydreamer was that some of the ladies came up with a variation, which they call the flat Daydreamer. So it's basically using the same kind of stitch combo, but just doing it as a flat bracelet instead of a rounded rope. And so they gave me permission to go ahead and do a video showing you this technique, and I'm finally here with the video. I made a couple of changes to what the original flat Daydreamer was, and so because I had to put my own Jill spin on it, of course, and I'm going to show you all about that now. So let's take a closer look here at my board. So here are two variations of flat Daydreamers that I've done. You're going to notice that they're different because here the super duos are oriented this direction. I guess we're going to call this vertically, and here they're oriented horizontally. So interestingly enough, as the ladies in the group were coming up with this variation where they were lined up in this direction, I at the same time had come up with this variation where they were lined up in the horizontal direction. So it's a perfect symmetry of great ideas. There's one other change though that I made, and this is a minor but pretty cool change. So normally, I think it's probably easier for me to show you on this one. These bronze beads, this right here, normally this little set of 4 beads right here would be all bronze, and they'd all be the same size. That's the way it's done in the normal Daydreamer, is that these little sets of 4 beads are all size 11 beads, and it's this little unit that you can see. You're going to notice that the ones in between here are bigger. They're size 8 beads instead of the 11s, and in my case I also used a different color. So it creates a really interesting line of demarcation down here. Same thing here, it creates a nice strong contrast between the lines of the super duos, so I really like it for that reason. The other reason I like it is because the spacing works out better, and I will show you what I'm talking about when I actually start beading here in a sec. Two other things I want to show you real quick. So in this flat Daydreamer, I used all the same color of super duo. Here, I used one of the new mixes of super duos that we just started carrying at jillwisemandesigns.com. I added about 8 to 10, maybe 12 mixes, and the color mixes are great for some things, not so great for others. This is one of the perfect kind of applications for it. The reason I think this is a perfect application is you don't really have to worry too much about color placement. You don't have to worry if each individual super duo is exactly the same size. You probably have noticed, if you've worked with the super duos long enough, that some colors are a little bit skinnier than others. Others are a little chunkier. So sizing can play a difference. For instance, actually, as I'm looking at this bracelet right here, this color is chunky, where the one right next to it, see how it's a little bit skinnier? Actually, on both sides, it's a little bit skinnier. In some projects, that might make a difference. And also, this is a pretty subtle difference between these three, but there are some where it's much more prevalent. You can see really, there's a really big chunky. It has to do with whether it's coated on the outside of the bead for the coloring or not. So this is, I think, a great use of them, and I made this one particular bracelet Jill size because I'm going to be wearing this bracelet. Anyway, So let me show you how we're going to start this out. Let me get my bead, my needle and thread here. I went ahead and added a stopper bead. I just picked a size 8 bead from a different project, so it's a different color, so that I will make sure that I don't accidentally stitch into it. And what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to show you how to do it in this vertical format. The steps that you take to do the horizontal format are exactly the same. It's just that you start out the long length of your bracelet first. You actually figure out what's going to fit across your wrist for on the very first pass, including your clasp. Where here we're going to work our way up to that length. So if that makes sense, here you start out with the length. Here you work your way up to the length. Here you start out with the width instead. So we start out by picking up a super duo, and then we're putting size 11 seed beads in between each of the super duos. So here's one super duo and a seed bead, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, and 6. And so I want to start and end with super duo. All the seed beads are in between, okay? I have already gone through, just as a side note, I've already gone through and checked all the holes on these super duos. As you know, you really want to make sure that both holes are not blocked before you start working with them. Okay, so then if you look here, actually let me show you on this side. If you look here, there's this little picot that for the turnaround when I want to start coming up the next direction here. So that means I'm going to pick up 3 seed beads. These are the size 11s. Okay, and then all I'm doing is I'm going right back through the hole, the next hole on the same super duo. So I'm just turning around, making myself a U-turn right there. Okay, so there's my little picot. And if your bead, your center bead doesn't want to pop out, sometimes it'll kind of get stuck down, just take your needle and get it into that hole and kind of pop it forward and then tighten. Then all we have to do for this pass is we're going to put seed beads, size 11 seed beads, in between each one of the holes on this side of your super duos. And your tension will probably be a little loosey-goosey as you go through here because there's not a lot to hold on to. We're going to tighten it all up when we get to the end. Almost there. And then there's that one. Okay. So now we have our first column. And we need another little picot on this end. So first thing that we're going to do, and this is, you really only have to do this at the start, is we're going to pick up our 3 seed beads for that picot, and then you're going to go back in the opposite direction through the super duo plus 1 seed bead. Okay. Because we're at the start, it doesn't matter whether I grow it off this side or whether I grow it off this side. Since my thread's over here, I'm just going to flip this. I'm a right-handed person, so it's easier for me to work on the right-hand side. So I'm just going to flip it so that's on the right, and I'm going to build right off that. Okay. So here's where normally, if you're doing a regular Daydreamer, right here you would pick up 3 size 11 seed beads, pass through the 11, and then move forward to the next 11. Do you remember this, right? So you just would be creating those little sets of 4 beads on top of each one of these seed beads. Well, we're still going to do that, but with a couple of changes. Your first stitch of each of these rows here is going to be different. Your first stitch you'll be picking up 3 beads. The remainder of these stitches you're only going to pick up 2 beads. And the other difference is that the 3 beads that you're picking up, instead of all being size 11s, what you're going to pick up is an 8, an 11, and an 8. Okay? Going to pass back through that same seed bead you're coming out of. So you need to go in the side where you don't already have thread coming out. Then I'm passing through a super duo, and the next seed bead, because I'm getting in position for the next stitch. And as I tighten that here, there we go. Let me get this other thread out of the way. Here's your unit of 4. So it's just the way you're used to seeing it. It's just that these 2 beads are a different size. Okay, so here's then the part that's going to repeat for the rest of your column here. Instead of picking up 3 beads, what we're going to do is you're going to pick up an 8 first and then an 11. And then you're going to pass through this 8 that's on the top here and the 11 that your thread is coming out of, and the super duo straight ahead, and the seed bead straight ahead of that. Okay? We're going to repeat this so you get another chance. And then as we tighten up, there we go. So there's that unit of 4. The deal is that this bead right here, it's part of this unit of 4 and it's part of this unit of 4. In the top unit of 4, it's the floor. If you look at it as a house, you've got the floor, the ceiling, wall, wall. Okay, so it's the floor there, but in this unit of 4, it's the ceiling, and then wall, wall, floor. So here we are, we're about to make this next unit of 4. There's your ceiling, there's your wall. We need the floor, and we need the other wall. So your floor is always the size 8, and your walls are always the size 11. You're going across the ceiling, down the wall, and then moving forward to the next size 11 seed bead there. Okay, so we've got 2 more times that we need to do this. So we're picking up an 8 and an 11, pass through the 8 along the top, the 11 down the wall, and then forward so that you're coming out of the next seed bead in the column. And then this will be our last one. An 8 and an 11, through the 8 on the ceiling, through the 11, through the super duo. In this case, you're going to go ahead and stop at that super duo because you're at that outside edge. Okay? And look, now you've got that beautiful line of beads right there. So now we need to get over here and we need to start adding super duos. We're going to be alternating, adding the super duos, adding these lines of the 8s and the 11s. So here we are. We've got our last right angle weave unit here. Look, we've got the whole row done. So to get to the outside edge here to add more super duos, what we're going to do is we're going to just pass through that last size 8 that you added. It's right next to where your thread's coming out, right like that. So now our next step is to add super duos in between each one of these sticky outy size 11s. So I'm just picking up one and passing through the next 11, or the 11 that's straight ahead, it's not the next. Same thing here, picking up one, passing through the 11 straight ahead. There we go. And all the way up. And I know those of you who are like me, who tend to be kind of anal retentive, mixes can be a little bit tough to work with because even though you're supposed to pick them up randomly, I sit here and analyze it a little bit. So you can kind of see me cherry picking my super duos as I do this. Ideally, you just pick up what's right there. I just can't bring myself to do it. So here we are. I'm on coming out of this last 11, but look, I need another super duo right here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use that picot turnaround to connect it in right there. So you're picking up your last super duo, and then you're going to pick up the 3 picot seed beads for that edge. This is where you have to bring it all the way down to the piece that you're working on. I tend to flip it at this point so that I can work my way up. I like to always kind of work away from my body. And so I'm just bringing that straight next to the beads. And then I'm passing through the second bead of that super duo that I just picked up. So there's the picot, and so that's how we connected in that super duo. Then this should look familiar to you. What are we going to do? Seed beads all the way through the second holes here of the super duos. And these are all your 11s again. The last one. Look what we're missing. We're missing the little picot right there. So we're going to pick up those 3 seed beads for the picot, pass back through the super duo. That's the other hole of the super duo that you're coming out of there, like so. Now it matches. I need to get my thread to this outside edge so that I can add our little right angle weave units. And so here, the best way to do this is just let this thread sit right across that super duo. I want to be coming out the very first seed bead in between the super duos. So I'm just going to pop my thread, my needle and thread through there. There we go. And you can't, even if this weren't a dark seed bead, a dark super duo, you wouldn't be able to see that thread anyway. I want to point something out right here, even though we're doing the horizontal version here. So we've basically done the first 2 sections of the horizontal one. Look, this is this, if I turn the orientation. So that is all that you would do, is just on that very first strip when you picked up all the super duos, you just pick up an entire amount to encircle your entire wrist, minus the amount of your clasp. And whatever clasp you choose is going to affect how much of a space you need. I made this one pretty close to where it almost touched around my wrist. So when I go to add a clasp, I'm going to use one of these 3-hole slider clasps. They slide apart like so. Because A, because it's very secure, and B, because it doesn't take up much room. So this is only going to add about 1/2 inch to the length of my bracelet. Okay, but we want to keep adding length. So here we are. We're at the spot with the, where now we're going to pick up the size 8s. Just getting that extra needle off there. First stitch of this round, you're picking up 3 beads. So this is where you're picking up an 8, an 11, and an 8. You're passing back through the 11 that you're coming out of, plus forward by 2 beads. Okay. There we go. Now you've got that ceiling bead. So now you're only going to have to pick up the floor and the wall. So an 8 for your floor, an 11 for your wall, and then you're passing across the ceiling, down the wall, and forward through 2 beads to the next 11 that you need to attach beads to. So there's your repetition over and over. And you'll just continue finishing that. I'm going to come down here and we'll show you the turnaround to get back to the where you're adding the super duos one more time. Okay, so here we are. I got to the end. I added this last set of beads here, and I finished by just going through that outside edge super duo. Remember, I need to get over so that I can add super duos in between each one of these size 11 seed beads. So all I have to do is pass through this size 8 right here. There we go. And now I can pick up my first super duo and pop straight through that size 11 that's right there. So it's a super, super easy turnaround. And then I'm adding super duos all the way across. You add the picot, come back around, put the 11s on the other side of the, between the holes, the second hole of the super duos, and then you're back to where you're adding your right angle weave unit. So you'll just continue adding those rows until you have the length that you want. So when we come back, I will show you a little bit closer on the length, and I'll also show you how to add a clasp. All right, so did you get into the rhythm of it? I really like making this a lot, actually. And so, you know, in the elongated one, where the super duos go horizontal that I did in the mix, that one I only did 2 rows worth because I just kind of made it a little skinnier. To me, it looks a lot like something that a guy could and would wear. I know I've got my guys out there who watch. This totally could be a guy bracelet right here. You can certainly make it wider and do it in this direction also, but this is just, I mean, I made this in probably, I'm going to guess it took me about an hour, maybe an hour and a half to do the whole thing. That's not so bad to do it. I'd be able to complete a whole bracelet in an evening. So, and I just like the simplicity of it. I just thought it was a really good casual summer bracelet that way. Then, of course, when you get the wider width, then it gets a little more dramatic. And so anyway, let me bring you closer to the board here so that we can talk about your length. Like I said, what kind of clasp you attach will affect how much space you want to leave between the 2 ends around your wrist. So let me show you this one. I did this basically so it touches. And then when I attach the clasp in there, it's going to make it loosen up just a little bit. I like my bracelets to be a little on the loose side so that it will, you know, move around nicely. So it'll be about like that once I add the clasp in. I know I said earlier that I was actually going to use this clasp on it, and I may, but look how the clasp goes, because this is so narrow, it goes out beyond the boundaries of the bracelet itself. What I will probably do instead actually is use one of the, there's a kind of clasp called a ball and hitch clasp. It's a very small profile, and again, a very secure one, and I will probably just attach that single one to the center bead here on both sides. It won't add any more width than this, so that the width will still be good. But these little beads on the edge here are going to be your attachment points. In this case, because this is the one that I did horizontally, it's the picot beads, okay? So there you would attach to the picot beads. In this longer one, where the picots are on this side, what you end up having on the end here is just, here's the best way to show you. Oop, there's my pointer. You'll just have single seed beads in between here. And so that's where you're going to attach, is through those single seed beads. So in this case, I'm going to show you on the end where I actually have the thread attached here. In this case, I am going to use this clasp, and this is the one I'm going to demo for you, if it'll stop throwing itself off my finger. And what I'm kind of looking at is where the holes on my clasp and the seed beads are lining up here. And even though this is a slight bit wider than the center 3 seed beads here, it's going to work out. So we're going to attach this seed bead to this ring, this seed bead to this ring, and this seed bead to this ring. And then the outside 2 seed beads here will not have any attachment. If you had a 5-ring one, you certainly could do it where it was a seed bead to a ring. But if you did that, what's going to happen is, look how the clasp sits out a little bit farther. So if this had 2 more rings here for these 2, it's going to sit right even with your picot on either side. So it's just, you know, people are always asking me, well, how do I attach the clasp on projects? It's going to vary on every single project. You're going to have to do a little evaluation. What bead does it make sense to attach things to? In this case, for instance, the ball and hitch clasp that I talked about on the skinnier one, you wouldn't want to do a clasp with a single attachment point here, because what would happen is you're going to attach it to the middle and you'd have that attachment, and look what's going to happen. These ends are going to kind of wing up a little bit on you when you wear it. So if, for instance, I didn't like this kind of clasp, what I would do instead is maybe you want to do 2 little clasps. So instead of doing one along the center here, I would attach a ball and hitch here and a ball and hitch here, and so that I could make sure that it was secure across the entire length of the bracelet. So that's why I don't always have just a general answer for how you attach clasps to anything. It's because it's different every time. Okay, so let's talk about this particular clasp and bracelet combo. So what I'm doing here is we talked about where I'm going to attach it and why I centered it. And then I'm doing it off a seed bead. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a loop of seed beads. And I'm going to experiment a little bit with how many seed beads I pick up, because what I'm going to need to do here is figure out, A, does the seed bead move freely through the loop? Which it does not. Okay, so that means the seed bead doesn't fit through the loop. That means I'm going to have to put half of the beads on and then my clasp and then half of the beads. If this moved freely through the loop, then you could attach all of the seed beads at once and then string your clasp on and just center the clasp on the seed beads. But in this case, we can't do that. So there's, a number one way that I personally learned to do some experimentation. Okay, so what I'm going to do instead is, how about let's pick up 3 seed beads, go through the clasp hole, and then another 3 seed beads. And then let's take a look at what that does. There we go. So there's a little bit of a loop there. It's not a huge loop. I might actually be even happier with this if it were just a smidge closer. So I'm going to do this one more time. And the reason I'm showing you how I experiment with this is so that you can start reasoning this out for yourself at home. I would be a little bit happier if this were just a little bit closer. So instead of 3 on each side of the clasp, I'm going to take it down to 2. So here I am, changing it again. Oops. You always have to have your patience working for you when you're getting ready to do a clasp. Ironically, you know how I said that those seed beads didn't move freely through there? One actually managed to make its way through. Those little stinkers. Okay, so there's 2 seed beads, the clasp, and 2 seed beads. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that this is going to be my winner. So my thread's coming out of this side of the seed bead, which means I'm going to pass through the other side to attach it. So we can create that little loop. And it's twisting on me because I've gone and changed it so many times. I managed to twist all the thread here. Let's let it untwist. There we go. Okay. Well, now I got myself a hot mess. This is where the twist is. There we go. Okay. There. Now I'm happy with that loop. And what I'm going to do then is move to the next seed bead along here. So I have to pass through the super duo and through the next seed bead. We're going to pick up 2 seed beads. We're going to pass through the second ring of the clasp. We're going to pick up the other 2 seed beads, pass back through the seed bead I was coming out of, through a super duo, and forward to the third seed bead that I'm going to attach this clasp to. And here we go. We're picking up 2, pass through the loop. I guess I've been going from bottom to top, haven't I? And then 2 more seed beads, and through the same seed bead I was coming out of in the bracelet base, and then through a super duo. There we go. There's that attachment. Now, because this is a clasp connection, I always want at least 3 passes of thread through each one of these attachments. Anytime you have a clasp, it's going to be your point of most wear and tear, and it's the most likely place for your bracelet to break. So if you reinforce each one of those attachments, it's much less likely to have a problem. So to get back in position to reinforce those, that's why I went through this super duo right here. I'm going to turn around by going through the other hole of that same super duo, and now I can come back over here. I'm just laying that thread along the super duo through that seed bead, and now I can go back through all 4 of those seed beads. So there were 2 on one side, 2 on the other side, come back and reinforce each one of those connections. So that is what I would do, and then you will do the exact same thing on the other side, and then you will have a gorgeous bracelet. On this one, I am going to do the exact same thing, just create a little loop off of that center seed bead picot right there. And so I'll just, in that case, there will only be one connection point on the clasp, and so I'll just create a little loop off of that center. So that is kind of my problem solving or my decision making skills, I guess, that I go through when I'm trying to figure out how to attach a clasp, and I hope that helps you guys. I really have enjoyed making the flat Daydreamer, and I think that you guys will too. Like I said, if you aren't part of the group, Jill Wiseman's Beautiful Beaded Ropes on Facebook, I strongly encourage you to come join it. And please share all of your photos with us because we love seeing what kind of projects you make too. Happy beading!